Good evening, friends, and welcome to this edition of the Hamilton Report. I'm Scott J. Hamilton, and I'm thankful that you are joining us tonight. You will see that I've already brought my guest on for this evening. And the last time that you saw us together was last Tuesday night, election night, when we were very, very fortunate to be joined by people around the country, political leaders, candidates, and just a whole bunch of ordinary Democrats working together to do the right thing. And so that was an exciting night, and truly Saturday was an historic day for our party and for our nation. But tonight we're going to bring things back closer to home, right here in Oklahoma. And she needs no introduction because you folks already know Alicia Andrews, the chair of the Oklahoma Democratic Party. But we're here tonight to explore where we go from here, how we continue to work in Oklahoma to make things more equitable for all people in Oklahoma. And I know it seems like we've hardly had a moment to breathe and accept the good news from the weekend, and we're off and running again. But that's just the nature of politics, and certainly politics here in Oklahoma. Alicia, we actually just got a question, and I'm going to start with it because I think it's a great question, and it will be a good way for us to start. Spencer Hankins from Oklahoma City says, "How do we Stacey Abrams Oklahoma?" In other words, he is really thrilled with the work that she's been doing, and how do we now move forward in a way that she has, capturing that kind of energy and attention from people everywhere?
So, Mr. Hankins, that's a great question. And that is exactly what Oklahoma needs. So Georgia was a red state, and Ms. Abrams got involved because she recognized that not only was she robbed in her election, but there were a lot of things wrong with the way the elections were handled in Georgia. And in doing her work, she helped get a lot of people registered to vote, not just in Georgia, but all over the country. And so we've been working in the last week trying to make connections with not just Georgia, but also Texas, because Texas has done a lot of voter registration work as well. And that is what Oklahoma needs. The amount of people who voted for Donald Trump is equal to the amount of registered Democrats that we have in Oklahoma. And so what that would have meant was 100% of registered Democrats would have had to show up in order to combat what that was. And, you know, Oklahoma does not have a history of 100% of any party showing up. So we have got to get more Democrats registered to vote. And what it's going to take is more Oklahomans dedicated to the process, more people engaged in their neighborhoods with the people that they know, more people interacting with the party. So it can be done. And that is really what we're going to be spending 2021 working on, so that we're ready when it's time for statewide. We have a governor's election in 2022. We have to spend 2021 getting ready for that.
Jenna Lewis Harkins just posted a note saying thank you to you, Alicia, for the work that you do. And I appreciate your thanks as well, Jana. You're a wonderful friend. But let's an organization like the Oklahoma Democratic Women, because that's one that Jana involves herself substantially. How do groups within the party, Alicia, help us register more Democrats, engage more people to run for office? How do we work with them more fully than maybe we have in previous years?
Oh, I love that question. So here's what a lot of people may not know. The Oklahoma Democratic Party has 7 federations, which are our different groups, our different constituency groups. So if you have a particular interest, I bet we have a group that you can interact with. And Jenna Lewis Harkins is the president of the Oklahoma Federation of Democratic Women. And they are one of our more active federations that are in the community, raising money to help candidates, recruiting candidates, and registering people to vote. So we have the Women's Federation, we have the Veterans Federation, we have the Federation of African American Democrats, we have the Native American Federation, we have the Latinx Federation, we have Stonewall, which is aimed at our LGBTQIA members. And so we have groups that if you're not sure how you want to come in, you're not sure you know someone, you don't want to show up and not know if you fit in, we have a group for you. There is a way for you to get involved. And each of those groups have goals of registering voters and recruiting candidates. And so like the Native American Federation, they're aimed at getting Native Americans engaged, helping Native Americans feel like they have a place, recruiting Native American candidates, and registering Native American voters. And we have those kinds of groups throughout the party. And so that is how we can get, how you can be of service and a way for you to get in.
Obviously, voter registration is going to be something that's going to be driving our work for the foreseeable future, as it will be in most traditionally red states, because that, as you point out, Alicia, is critical to our success. But what else can we be doing? And when I say we, I mean the Oklahoma Democratic Party. And I'm putting it that way because every Democrat is a part of the party. How, besides getting involved with the federation, what can we all be doing individually to help make a difference to get more Democrats elected to office?
Well, I like to say that there are three ways that we get involved. One, we get involved and we tell all of our friends and neighbors, because people are drawn to people that they know, like, and trust. And then we engage in helping, recruiting candidates is a big one, recruiting candidates and then supporting those candidates once they get their names on the ballot. We have in December in Oklahoma City and Tulsa, and I believe in Guthrie, they will be filing for school board. We need to be recruiting people for the school board.
City council as well in Oklahoma City.
City council as well. We need to be recruiting people for those slots. And though those positions are typically nonpartisan, those people are involved in politics, so they're registered somehow. So we need to be recruiting people for those positions. And then once we recruit somebody and get them to put their name on the ballot, we need to be supporting them through our time, through our money, and any other resources that we have available to ourselves. So those are the ways that we can be involved, by just making sure that people understand what the Democratic Party stands for. And what we stand for is looking out for our fellow man.
Alicia, you and I had a conversation a month or so ago with a young man who is an attorney here in Oklahoma City, but who has some aspirations in terms of public office. And when he came to us, he said, I have no idea what I want to do. I just want to make a difference. One of the things that you encouraged him was to start as local as he possibly could. And he said, well, I don't know if I want to be a career politician. And your advice to him was, you don't have to be. You just have to run for something that you believe in. Now, that was easy to say to someone who came to us. But how would you approach someone who may be watching tonight and says, I've never really thought about it, but I think that I could do some good? What's the next step for that person?
Truly, someone who's involved in the Democratic Party. And if you don't, you now know me, you now know Scott, someone who's involved in the Democratic Party. Reach out to that person and tell them what you're interested in. And chances are they will tell you what positions make sense for you, what positions match where you live. Entry is easy. But you need to have the conversation about what it takes to run. And if you're ready, and you don't have to be ready now, you can be ready in 2 years, you can be ready in 4 years, but you need to start the conversation. And the easiest way to figure out if you're ready is to support someone else who's on the ballot. You get an up close and personal view on what it takes to run.
I'm glad you said that, because I think that oftentimes it's real easy just to be so concerned about your community or your state that you just want to jump in and without giving consideration, because there really is a lot to consider when it comes to the time involved, what that means to your family, What would that mean in terms of taking time from your business? I'm not saying this to discourage anyone, but I'm just underscoring the fact that you really have to do a needs assessment of yourself. What are your needs as an individual, and how can you work within your own structure, your own family structure, for example, to make being a candidate a viable, worthwhile thing?
Well, Scott, may I add? May I add something?
Please.
So most new candidates come because of one issue that's really important to them. And so when we talk about recruiting, a lot of times that one issue decides what level of government you should be in, right? If it's a speed bump in your neighborhood, that's city council. If it's, the hospitals closing, that's, getting involved in legislative at legislative level. And so there's that takes into consideration as well. And then there are people who get involved because they look around, and the historic election of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris has made people start to look around, and people want to see someone who looks like them in elected office.
And I have to say that in 2020, Democrats, we lifted up candidates who really represent Oklahomans. I mean, these are people that look like us. They have jobs like us, a wide variety of people. It wasn't by any means monolithic, but rather it was one of the most diverse groups of candidates I've seen in a long time. And that was very exciting for me to see. We should also point out that education isn't everything. For example, oh, I don't have a master's degree, I probably could never win a House seat. That's not true, is it?
That's not true. That's not true in Oklahoma. And I'm saying, before you disqualify yourself, talk to someone who's involved in the party, and let's see where you're a good fit, right? Because really what it takes is a heart. Really what it takes is someone who wants to do the job and who is willing to do the work it takes to get to the job. And so, when I was talking about people who look like you on the ballot, in Oklahoma City Ward 7, we have a great Latinx woman running for that seat. In Ward 7, we have an African American woman who currently holds that seat and is running to keep that seat. I can't think of Mr. Brooks's ward number. Do you remember? Is that his name?
James Martinez Brooks?
James Cooper. I'm sorry, James Cooper.
Oh, yes, he is Ward 2.
Okay, so in Ward 2, we have an LGBTQIA person in that seat. And as Scott was saying, our candidates on the Democrat side look like Oklahoma, right? We have the diversity, and we have to support and love that diversity. And speaking of that diversity, on Tuesday, we elected our first non-binary person to the legislature. That's something worth celebrating. We elected a new Latin man in Jose Cruz. That's something to be celebrated. So, I'm excited about that, and it gives me hope, and it gives me inspiration for future elections.
And I think that's what we all need to do is take stock of the fact that we are moving forward, even if it's not as quickly as we thought we might, or that we wished that we could. But by electing a non-binary woman who is a person who is also a Muslim, that's a big deal for Oklahoma. And I'm grateful to see that they have really gotten a lot of good national support and attention, not just because they are non-binary and Muslim, but because of the goals that she has for the people that she represents. And that's what it comes down to. It's less about what you've done in your life, although that certainly comes into play, but how can you relate? What can you bring to the table? And let's talk about, we mentioned voter registration, Alicia, but in other ways that people can get involved in the party. Mentioned federations, but what other volunteer opportunities exist?
Absolutely. So some of the things that we want to do in the party is to raise our profile. Our message isn't getting out to as many places as we'd like to get. And so we've been working on building, what we're calling communication ambassadors. We need people who are willing to write letters to the editors. However, we'd like to focus it, and our communication director is working on that. So be on the lookout for that, because what we'd like to do, we're not getting our message into rural Oklahoma, and rural Oklahoma needs our message more than they know. And so if we could have folks who live in rural Oklahoma help us with letters to the editor on specific issues and messages, I think that would go a long way. So that's one thing, and that's a volunteer opportunity. I don't want to spread it out too much, because I think we have to be very focused in order to get as much done as we need to get done. But getting our message out there so that people recognize there are people who truly, based on our petition initiatives, that there are people who are more left-leaning than they realize that they are. Mm-hmm. Because whenever a value issue is put on the ballot, Oklahomans vote for it. And those are really democratic values. And so we've just got to get our message out into rural Oklahoma. And so anyone who can help us with that, we're looking for that. And again, the big things we're going to be focusing on in 2021 are voters registration, volunteer engagement, and recruiting candidates. Those are our biggies. There's a whole lot more work that needs to be done, but we need to focus so we can actually make ground and see a difference.
You mentioned letters to the editor, and honestly, if you live in a rural community, a letter coming from you is going to carry much more weight than it would from Alicia or me or anyone else in the party, because the people who run the newspaper are people who live in your community. The people who read the newspaper are people who live in your community. So I think that's a wonderful place to start. And I want to just spend a little bit of time talking about the things that I've seen over the last few days. And I know that the media is tending to blow this out of proportion, but still it is an issue when you have people publicly within the party saying, well, it was the progressives who did this or didn't do that. It was the moderates who did this or didn't do that. And we didn't accomplish this because of this and this. And there's an awful lot of Monday morning quarterbacking going on. And that's true here in Oklahoma as well. It's real easy to sit behind a keyboard and make yourself known. But what's the end goal? Is it to make ourselves grander, or is it to really work for a common purpose?
During the June election, when we had Medicaid expansion on the ballot, it passed, but it was a tough one. And there was a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking with that as well. There was a lot of trash talking our rural neighbors. And I said back in June, and my position hasn't changed. I don't believe that people necessarily vote against their interest. I think that people vote based on the information that they receive and how they believe it fits into their lives. And so, when I talk about rural Oklahoma, I say we're not getting our message to rural Oklahoma. That's why they're not voting for us. With regards to, did the progressives take our message too far to the left, or did the moderates hold the progressives back? Did the somethings else, and we don't even want to talk about that, did the something else folks not show up in certain states? Did all of that jazz, and that's fun, and they have 24 hours worth of news that they have to try to cover. But the reality is that the Democratic Party is a big tent party, and we need the moderates. As much as, we want folks to come on with us, we need the moderates, particularly in this state. We need the progressives to make sure that we're opening our tent and making sure that we're taking care of the most amount of people that we can. We need folks of all colors and stripes. And so I'm never going to get on the bandwagon that says that the moderates held us back or the progressives took us to left, because that's who the Democratic Party is. We welcome diversity. And because of that diversity, America's kind of a better place. Oklahoma for sure is a better place. We got Medicaid expansion. We got criminal justice reform in the form of 780 and 781. Those are liberal progressive values. We got those. That's what it's going to take to bring our state where we need to be.
And I should point out, Alicia, we got those because our Republican legislature would not do their job. And I'm sorry, but that's just a straight up reality. We gave away years worth of Medicaid money that we could have expanded, that we could have kept hospitals from closing, and we didn't. It was this bullheadedness that served no one well. So what happens is, as you point out, when you put an issue before the people that makes sense to the people speak. I'm very grateful that that 814 failed, because that was simply giving a big blank check.
Absolutely.
Legislature, which means that they didn't have to do their job. Well, the people knew better than that, and so they voted that down, and that's a very good thing. And that's being involved as well. It's talking to your neighbors. It's talking to your friends. It's explaining why we have to do what we have to do as individual voters. You added the experience with a friend of yours who changed positions completely once the person really understood the ramifications of what the state question was all about.
Well, the marketing of 814 to the rural communities, and this goes back, there's a theme, isn't there? But the marketing to the rural communities was, you guys passed Medicaid expansion, and we have no idea how we're going to pay for it unless we take the money from TSET. Well, they said that without guaranteeing that the money that they were robbing was actually going to go to Medicaid expansion. But a lot of folks worked really hard to get Medicaid expansion, and they were afraid that if we didn't pass 814, that Medicaid expansion wouldn't be paid for because of the propaganda that they received.
That's right.
But I had conversations, provided more research, and had this person talk to more people who knew about it, and she's a rural voter. She completely changed to the other side and became a staunch advocate for the opposition of 814. And thankfully 814 didn't pass, and we're not going to rob the trust fund. And the legislators are going to have to work at finding ways to diversify our revenue stream.
And I think that goes back to what we were talking about a moment ago. I said master's degree. I was just using that term interchangeably with bachelor's degree or associate's degree or high school education. Whatever it is, you have a part to play. And the fact that you spoke to one person, you helped her to understand. How many people did she reach then?
She has a very large reach, and
exactly.
And I'm grateful that we crossed paths and have that conversation, and I was able to communicate it in such a way that she understood it. I don't want to say that I guess I did educate her, but I don't want to make it like it's all about me. I'm glad that I was able to get her to understand it as it was written and not as the junk she was getting in the mail from the other side.
And I'll tell you something. I think that we all were in information overload this past election. And now that there are still Senate seats in contests around the country, I'm still getting a lot of information, as I know that you folks are too. Bonnie is saying information is power. We need to get the correct information out and counter the disinformation. That's really what we've been talking about, is not countering disinformation, because that's like talking to a wall. But if you just present the truth as the truth, and you don't have to say, well, but what they're saying is wrong, because you don't have to do any of that. Once you lay the truth out, then I think that goes a long way in helping people really to understand.
And that is what I try to do. Because I don't like the negative stuff. I know the negative stuff is real. I just don't like to traffic in it. But because I think that when you have truth on your side, you don't have to do that. And The reality is, the truth was that TSET was that 814 was trying to rob the trust fund.
Yes.
And that's just the fact. And making sure that people understood that they were trying to rob the trust fund, and it wasn't guaranteed that once they got the money, they were going to spend it on Medicaid expansion. That's when people fully understood that they were saying we could spend it on this. And that's just, we've got to get our information out there as well. And Janet, I am so sorry that you were misinformed on 814, but they were working overtime to make sure that you were misinformed on 814.
Yes, they did. You got to give them that. They did a good job in misinforming people.
Right. And, and I'm going to say this because of Janet's information and because we're talking about this, the misinformation, all of the mailers that you were getting and the commercials, all of that stuff costs money. And, Democrats fight with their sweat equity, and we're really good at it. COVID kind of got in the way, but we also need to fight with money. You got to fight fire with fire. And so you ask me, how else can people help? There's volunteering, there's recruiting candidates, there's staying involved, but it also takes some financial contributions. It also takes money to help keep our website up and help us develop programs and help do these things. All of that also takes money. And, it's election season, and almost every time you pick up your phone, there's somebody texting you and asking you for money. But the party needs money in order to be able to do these things, in order to be able to send out mailers combating information, in order to put people on the ground, to organize all the volunteers. That takes money. I know that the Senate races in Georgia are very important. They are very important. We need to flip the Senate so that that President Biden and Vice President Harris will be able to do their work. They need to be able to work with the legislature. And so those are important races. But while you're thinking about helping Georgia, and I'm not saying don't help Georgia, we need that. But also think about helping Oklahoma. In this last election cycle, for every $1 spent on helping a candidate in Oklahoma, $2 were sent outside of Oklahoma to a candidate somewhere else.
So that means that Oklahomans spent twice as much money outside of our state than inside.
Twice as much money. And the races that got the most Oklahoma money outside of Oklahoma did not win.
Yeah.
And so helping that candidate who lives up the street from you, you have some influence on that candidate, and you can see how the money's being spent.
That's right.
And so I'd like you to consider donating to the party. And I got to brag a little bit. The party was in serious amount of debt 18 months ago, and the party is no longer in debt. And so any money that you donate to the party now goes towards future programs. It goes towards future plans. And so any help you could offer, we would be grateful for.
Alicia, we're almost out of time, and this has gone very quickly. I think it would be a good idea for us to plan on doing another episode like this over the next coming weeks, because as we begin to ferret out some things and really put our plans in place starting for January 1, we really want to make certain that everybody has a clear sense on how they can jump in and be involved. And I appreciate your time. And I just need to say, I appreciate all that you've done this season. I appreciate the work that you do every day for all of us. And here it is, 7:30 on a Monday night, and you are talking to me instead of watching Monday Night Football. Alicia, thanks. I will talk to you soon. We should point out, though, that your daily lives are no longer daily lives. And for those of you who have paid any attention, Alicia has gone live every day since March, except for 2, and both of those were technological issues. Every single day, Monday through Friday, talking to us about what we need to know, what's important, and it has proven to be so, so valuable. But now that the election is over, she has made the decision, much to my chagrin, that she will not be doing them daily, and we will be announcing very soon how frequent they will be. We're still in negotiation over that. Alicia's thinking 1 day a week. I'm thinking probably a couple would be better. But we will let you know. That'll be available on our Facebook page. Alicia, thank you so much, and we'll all look forward to working with you and talking to you soon.
Thanks for what you do, Scott.
Thank you. And this, I'm going to take a moment of privilege. We are just, we're running a little late tonight, but I need to do this. You will see this person's name pop up from time to time with comments on this program as well as on Alicia's lives. And this is my personal privilege to say a very special word of thanks to my husband, Wayne Johnson, who has been extraordinarily generous with his time. When I'm working nights and weekends, never a complaint, and that means a lot. That allows me to do what I do. So friends, that's our time for tonight. I so appreciate you being with us. I hope that you will share this broadcast with your friends. Put it on your social media pages, because the more people that hear what we have to say, the more hearts and minds we can pull along with us to continue to make a difference, a powerful, positive difference for the people of Oklahoma. I look forward to spending a half hour again with you next Monday night. And until then, I'm going to ask you to do two things. One is, please, if you haven't yet, get your flu shot. And if you have done that, that's great. And in addition to that, wear your mask. I know that there just continues to be this disinformation about masks. We know that they help. So please take care of yourself. You are important to me, and you're important to others, and I value you. So please take good care of yourself. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you again next week at 7 o'clock for the next edition of the Hamilton Report. Good night, everyone.